Hello. Looking hi wild. I'm so glad you're here. I know you said you had to pop in and out. But I too am looking forward to hearing everyone's thoughts and going through everything you put in the thing. Hold on, I will give my face in just a second. You're also okay, cool. Okay, great. Oh, I absolutely was about to do all of that without my face. That would have been that would have been a mess. Okay. Bring that down. Okay. Okay. Whew. We're live. We are discussing the Fellowship of the Rings in its totality today, which is incredibly exciting. Good morning, Kelly. Good morning. Wow. I am in the process of moving rooms. Well, this is now my office instead of my office and my bedroom. But ooh, I don't know that I like it. I mean, I like it, but the echoing. I'm gonna need to get a carpet in here. Perhaps we were stuck in Lothlorien for a while. Andrew, you are so right, because perhaps maybe an entire month passed in Lothlorien. Could we have stayed forever? Could we have? That would have been nice. Andrew has already said the best thing of the day. It's so freaking true. I cannot believe we have finished Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, I will say, before we get too far into it, for Two Towers, which we're going to start next week, talking about next week, we're going to do 2 chapter sections instead, because some of the chapters in this book, at least in book 3, are quite a bit longer. So next week we'll only have about like 40 pages to read between now and next Monday. But then like there are some chapters that are like 34 pages and whatnot. So we're going to do 2 chapter sections until we do the end, and then we're going to do 3. They were longer in Lorien than it seemed. The time there passes differently, for sure. It absolutely passes differently. Okay. So Fellowship of the Rings. We finished it. We did, which I'm so excited about. It was a trying to think of how I want to like describe how I feel having finished it. I mean, like, this is a well-read book. I always know a book is well-read when like it's like so much thicker than when you started. Like I don't know how that happens. Just well read. We've got some good so we read through chapters 7 through 10, which all in all puts us at the finale of Fellowship of the Rings. 7 through 10? Yeah. Okay. So those chapters were The Mirror of Galadriel, Farewell to Lorien, The Great River, and The Breaking of the Fellowship. So we're going to go chapter by chapter. and discuss it. And then we can do like an overall discussion. Do you want to post? I wrote something to post there. Yes, I just reshared the one from last week because I woke up last Monday with a really sore throat. It felt like I was like swallowing through pins and needles. So we, did you put anything last week? Oh, but it is in there if you want to go and if you want to put your thoughts in that. Hail and well met, Toodles. Hello. Our journey it has begun in earnest. It has. I think, okay, let's start this right off the bat with something. I think that my favorite Lothlorien is my favorite section of the book. I had a feeling it would be. Hi, Carlos. But why I think that is that Tolkien has some of the best, like, I say this I bring it up every once in a while. I'm like, I always highlight sections that I think are brilliant, descriptive, world building sections in his writing. And there's something about the way he writes about the elves and specifically our time in Lothlorien that is next level. It's so good. It's so impressive. Like, let me just read like the introduction to the Mirror of Galadriel, the first chapter that we read, chapter 7. Let me just take a sip of my tea. You pasted it into last week's post? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kelly. Yes, I realized like 30 minutes before I started, I was like, you know what? I just put like book club is tonight and had reshared last week's like book club is tonight. Oh, because I had scheduled that or whatever. I don't know. I think I'd put that out on Sunday. Regardless, here we are today discussing the end of the book. Thank you for sharing your thoughts so that we can discuss everything together. All right, let me read wait. Yes, okay. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, and the shadows were deepening in the woods when they went on again. Their paths now went into the thickets where the dusk had already gathered. Night came beneath the trees as they walked, and the elves uncovered their silver lamps. Suddenly they came out into the open again and found themselves under a pale evening sky, pricked by a few early stars. There was a wide treeless space before them, running in a great circle and bending away on either hand. Beyond it was a deep fosse lost in the soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if glowed still in the memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side there rose to a great height a green wall encircling a green hill, thronged with malorn trees, taller than any they had yet seen in all the land. Let's read that sentence again, because just that one sentence, or these two sentences. Beyond it was a deep fosse lost in soft shadow, but the grass upon its brink was green, as if it glowed still in memory of the sun that had gone. Upon the further side there rose to a great height a green wall, encircling a green hill, thronged with malorn trees taller than they had yet seen in all the land. Their height could not be guessed, but they stood up in the twilight like living towers, and their many-tiered branches and amid their ever-moving leaves, countless lights were gleaming green and gold and silver. Haldir turned towards the company. "Welcome to Cras Galadan," he said. "Here is the city of Galadrim, where dwell the Lord Celeborn and Galadriel, the Lady of Lorien. But we cannot enter here, for the gates do not look northward. We must go round the southern side, and the way is not short, for the city is great." Obviously, like the more middle section of that when he's describing the land there is just, it sets the scene in such a beautiful way. And I think there are certain word choices like the soft shadow, but then the the grass glowing as if it still held the memory of the sun. It's just so, I don't know. There are moments in this book where I think he uses this same kind of descriptive writing and it is burdensome. And in these moments when Tolkien uses this descriptive writing, it's magical. It's like lifting. I want to live in it. I want it to like consume me, if that makes any sense. So I think we get some of his best descriptive work. The core of Tolkien's work is based around the elves. I guess, yeah, okay, Kelly, yes. You guess that's where his heart is. I think I have to agree because the way that Tolkien writes about the elves and writes about the land of the elves is, it feels like he's so deeply in love with it. Glowed still in memory of the sun that had gone, a line well worth highlighting. Indeed, indeed. Yes, I wrote. Okay, yeah. So they continue on, and this is a little like a few beats later, but I also wrote the description of writing here was good. They went along many paths and climbed many stairs until they came to the high places and saw before them amid a wide lawn a fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees, and it fell into a basin of silver, from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth hole gleamed like gray silk. Great smooth bowl, gleamed like gray silk, and up it towered, until its first branches far above opened their huge limbs under shadowy clouds of leaves. Let's just sink into that. Before them amid a wide lawn of fountain shimmering. It was lit by silver lamps that swung from the boughs of trees, and it fell into a basin of silver from which a white stream spilled. Upon the south side of the lawn there stood the mightiest of all the trees. Its great smooth bowl gleamed like gray silk, and up it towered, until its first branches far above opened their huge limbs under the shadowy clouds of leaves. Beside it a broad white ladder stood, and at its foot 3 elves were seated. They sprang up as the travelers approached, and Frodo saw that they were tall and clad in gray mail, and from their shoulders hung long white cloaks. It's almost as if he's written the trees as a character. Oh, Celeborn. Is it Celeborn or is it Celeborn? I'm not sure. That's a great... hard K, so Celeborn. Okay, thank you. C is Sindarian and Quenya is pronounced K. Okay, so a hard K. As always, the value of K even before. Okay, look at that. You guys are pulling out the appendix. Thank you. Thank you. I was familiar with Galadriel with that pronunciation more than I was familiar with Celeborn. Because let's be honest, Galadriel's she's a star. You know, I've heard people say that Tolkien doesn't know how to write women, but I disagree. I mean, if you pinpoint it down to just Galadriel, I'm like, no, he did a really good job. I think that's a really phenomenal female character he's written. Powerful too. Incredibly powerful. Okay, so the major beats of chapter 7 in Fellowship of the Rings, book 2. We meet the Lord and the Lady, and they get so we continue with that, all of that. That's 2 pages of literally just describing where we are. Just describing the beauty of Lothlorien. We haven't even gotten up into the tree. We're now going to climb up into the tree, and that's where we actually do meet Celeborn and Galadriel, who are 2 giant characters. And there's a couple beats within this specific meeting that I think are important. Obviously, where we meet in this. I feel like we might do a little more like reading of the book than we've done normally, which I don't know that anyone minds. It's such a, well, maybe these first 2 chapters, I'm obsessed with the way he writes about the elves. He does such a phenomenal job in a book that's so serious. It's these first 2 chapters that we read today, chapter 7 and chapter 8, are so light and like fluff. I say the word fluffy, not in that the substance of what we read there is fluffy, because there are a lot of important moments in these 2 chapters, but fluffy and like there's these little moments of like tension building, or like reminder that we're currently safe and everything's okay here, but outside of this forest, this nest of safety that we found ourselves in, things are not safe. And the moment that we have to leave, and we will have to leave eventually, it will come crashing down on us quickly. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the Lord. Galadriel is one of the most badass yet feminine characters I've ever read in written form. Agreed. I'd have to agree. Trees are usually living beings, even if they are dormant. Hence all treants or woken trees that walk. Wow. Because we've heard a little bit about like the walking trees. But yeah, he really did write trees as their own character. As an Amazonian figure, he wrote Galadriel as, oh, I believe it. Okay, yes. So we make it up the tree, and we walk into this chamber. The chamber was filled with a soft light. Its walls were green and silver, and its roof of gold. I can just imagine. It seems so like, it seems so grand. Many elves were seated there on 2 chairs beneath the bole of the tree, and canopied by a living bow that there sat side by side Celeborn and Galadriel. They stood up to greet their guests after the manner of elves, even those who were accounted mighty kings. Very tall they were, and the lady no less tall than the Lord. And they were clad wholly in white, and the hair of the lady was of deep gold, and the hair of Lord Celeborn was of silver, long and bright, but no sign of age was upon them, unless it were in the depths of their eyes. So we meet these people. They seem like a lot of elves, smart, quick, stern, and soft of heart, soft-natured maybe, not soft like weak in any way. Amazonian was often used in reference to any woman who was taller than average. Oh, I wonder what the average height was back then. I imagine Tolkien would see me as an Amazonian, as I am quite tall. But I believe the like average height just like has increased over the years. Correct? Well, actually, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of my toes. Okay, so an important thing to note upon meeting Celeborn and Galadriel is the way they interact with the Fellowship. So obviously, they have been told of who is with the group. They were told ahead of time that we were coming. They knew that we had left as a group of 9. But most importantly is there's 2 really big things that stand out to me upon the first meeting. One is something that is said to Aragorn, which is a kind of, it's an example of how the seriousness that still lies upon our journey is weaved into these chapters. Because can you imagine being greeted like this? Welcome, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. It is 38 years of the world outside since you came to this land, and those years lie heavy on you. But the end is near, for good or ill. Here, lay aside your burden for a while. The end is near, for good or ill. It's such a knowing, like, phrase that someone that is wise is saying to us, like, okay, yep, welcome. It's good to see you, but also the end is near. Could it be good? It could be bad. we'll see. And then, of course, we've spoken before of the history of the elves and the dwarves, and how the elves and the dwarves are not necessarily on the best terms. There's some bad blood between these races, and they specifically welcome in Gimli. It is long indeed since we saw one of Durin's folks in Galadriel, but today we have broken our long law. May it be a sign that though the world is now dark, better days are at hand, and that friendship will be renewed between our peoples. Yep, yeah. Height. Amazonians. And Aragorn knows he is the center of it all, yeah, doesn't he? He's such a... Yeah, we'll talk... I want to talk specifically when we get towards chapter 9 about the different... Not necessarily that Boromir is doing any leading, but there's a moment specifically that there's some interesting stuff that happens between interesting moments that happen between those two, and I think it's worth talking about like the differences in leadership or like personality there. But moving on, we're still in Lothlorien. We're still talking to the Lord and the Lady, and they're asking what happened to Gandalf. We have to let them know what happened, that Gandalf fell to the shadows in Moria and did not escape. And all of the elves in that, this line is weep-worthy. All at these words, all the elves in the hall cried aloud in grief and amazement. These are evil tidings. The most evil that have been spoken here in long years, full of grievous deeds. So this was the Lord and the Lady's first time hearing what had happened. And the group is like, we didn't have time to grieve. We didn't have time to talk about this. We needed to get to safety. All of this happened really quickly. And so they're welcomed in to kind of grieve and have this moment and tell the full story. And oh wait, there was, hold on. Oh yeah, okay, so it's important to note that Gandalf fell to hit to the shadows in Moria, which was originally Dwelven land. Dwelven? It is story time. We're going through we're also YouTube, we are dual streaming over on TikTok today to kind of widen book club. So if you hear me talking to a ghost, they're just in different Oh, Iceberg, yes, hi, welcome on in. Yeah, we're going over Fellowship of the Rings. Okay, so yes, so Moria was Dwarven land originally, right? And so Celeborn immediately, like, we have just welcomed in Gimli with like love and saying like, this is a sign of friendship, this is a sign that the bad days are behind us. And then immediately upon finding out that Gandalf fell to the shadows in Moria, he's feeling a type of way. We have long feared that under Caradas a terror slept, but had I known that the dwarves had stirred up this evil in Moria again, I would have forbidden you to pass the northern borders, you and all that went with you. And if it were possible, one would say that at the last Gandalf fell from wisdom into folly, going needlessly into the net of Moria. And Galadriel goes, needless were none of the deeds of Gandalf in life. Those that followed him knew not his mind and cannot report his full purpose. But however it may be with the guide, the followers are blameless. Do not repent of your welcome to the dwarf. If our folk had been exiled long and far from Lothlorien, who of the Galadrim, even Celeborn the wise, would pass nigh and would not wish to look upon their ancient home, though it had become an abode of dragons? God, that's such a... Yeah. It gets like really tense there for a moment. And I've reflected on this part more than a lot because I think this was so there's so many. Okay, we've talked about his writing. I don't think something I've deeply described my appreciation for enough in Tolkien's writing is that there are moments where I feel like other authors would just be like, once something is said to be fine, everything is fine. There's no more bad blood. There doesn't need to be any tension. There doesn't need to be any second guessing of people or of moments. And Tolkien doesn't let that rest. He's like, you know what? Actually, there is still bad blood. And it is really like, it's not as easy to forgive as like you can write it. And he doesn't let that ease of writing forgiveness be the ease of the character actually forgiving. Hi, Michael. Welcome on in. We are just talking about the Mirror of Galadriel chapter and Fellowship of the Ring. And we're getting to the end of it today. So, but we're moving. I don't know. We're taking our time today. So, more tea, more going on. We're up in the tree. We've met the Lord and Lady. We've had this moment. We've explained where Gandalf is. Gandalf has fallen to the shadows. We have this moment of tension between the elves and the dwarves. We move past it. And then Lady Galadriel gives everyone a test of the heart, which she does very silently, right? She could just kind of like looks them all in the eyes, essentially. But what she says before she does this, I think this is such a beautiful way of explaining where we're at in our mission of getting the ring to Mordor. Your quest stands upon the edge of a knife. Stray but a little and it will fail, to the ruin of all. Yet hope remains while all the company is true. So then she looks everyone into their eyes and gives them this silent test of their hearts. And the dwarf, hearing the names given in his own ancient tongue, looked up and met her eyes. Yep. And it seemed, oh, yes. She looked upon Gimli, who sat glowering and sad, and she smiled. And it seemed to him that he looked suddenly into the heart of an enemy and saw there loving and understanding. Yep. The heart of an enemy. Yeah. The moment between the dwarf and the elves, specifically in the Mirror of Galadriel, it's incredibly important. It's an incredibly important moment. So, okay, yes, continuing on. She gives him this test of the heart, and then she dismisses everyone. You are worn with sorrow and much toil. Even if your quest did not concern us closely, you should have refuge in this city until you were healed and refreshed. Now you shall rest, and we will not speak of your further road for a while. So the company, the fellowship, we're getting this moment that we need, which is like to rest, to recover, to grieve. And that's exactly what we do. But first we go back and we're setting up our sleeps for the night, or turning down for the night. And everyone kind of talks a little bit about the fact that the testing of the hearts. What did you blush for, Sam? Said Pippin. You soon broke down. Anyone would have thought you had a guilty conscience. I hope it was nothing worse than a wicked plot to steal one of my blankets. I never thought no such thing, answered Sam, in no mood for jest, which Sam is, well, I can't say Sam is generally in the mood for jest. If you want to know, I feel as if I hadn't got nothing on, and I didn't like it. She seemed to be looking inside me and asking me what I would do if she gave me the chance of flying back home to the Shire, to a nice little hole with a bit of garden of my own. That's funny, said Mary. Almost exactly what I felt myself. Only, well, I don't think I'll say any more, he ended, lamely. All of them, it seemed, had fared alike. Each had felt that he was offered a choice between a shadow full of fear that lay ahead and something that he greatly desired. Clear before his mind it lay, and to get it he had only to turn aside from the road and leave the quest and the war against Sauron to others. And it seemed to me too, said Gimli, that my choice would remain secret and known only to myself. To me it seemed exceedingly strange, said Boromir. Maybe it was only a test, and she thought to read our thoughts for her own good purpose, but almost I should have said that she was tempting us, an offering that she pretended to have the power to give. It need not be said that I refused to listen. The men of Minas Tirith are true to their word. But what he thought that the lady had offered him, Boromir did not tell. And as for Frodo, he would not speak. Yeah. So everyone, I think she later refers to it as a test of the heart. So they all get this test. She needed to know. And it's interesting that she can see into them. See into them. Yes. Well, and this is, we kind of see this moment. So also thank you for the black cat and the roses on TikTok. Okay, so we've seen for Boromir specifically a few moments of at the beginning when we're in Rivendell, we get this peak of like a you don't think she tested Aragorn? I don't think it ever says. One way or not as I'm reading here, Kelly. Are you sure? Or we just didn't say that? It just doesn't say. None save Legolas and Aragorn could long endure her glance. Okay, so she also didn't test Legolas. That's the wicked way of Tolkien writing. Sometimes it's written in a little riddle. She attempts. But okay, so yes, moving along. After the test, we are given this moment, and we don't know how long. It just says they remained some days in Lothlorien. I'm sure she is okay with him courting her granddaughter. I guess she trusts him. I hope she does. As we know from when we first talked to the Lady and the Lord, we had to tell them of the passing of Gandalf. And there's a moment here written where as they're like walking and they're taking these days and moments to rest, there's Frodo, there's mention that Frodo is still too sad, that his grief is not for, grief was still too near, a matter for tears and not yet for song. But then, eventually, Frodo does put his sorrow into halting words. And Frodo's not one to often make hymns or songs, etc. But for Gandalf, I suppose, we'll make a little exception, right? When evening in the Shire was grey, his footsteps on the hill were heard. Before the dawn he went away, on journey long without a word. From Wilderland to western shore, from northern waste to southern hill, through dragon lair and hidden door and darkling woods he walked at will, with dwarf and hobbit, elves and men, with mortal and immortal folk, with bird on bow and beast in den, in their own secret tongues he spoke. A deadly sword, a healing hand, a back that bent beneath its load, a trumpet voice, a burning brand, a weary pilgrim on the road. A lord of wisdom throned he sat, swift in anger, quick to laugh. An old man in a battered hat, who leaned upon a thorny staff. He stood upon the bridge alone, and fire and shadow both defied. His staff was broken on the stone, and Khazad-dûm, his wisdom died. And Sam remarks, well, Mr. Frodo, if you do have another go, I hope you'll say a word about his fireworks, something like this. The finest rockets ever seen, they burst in stars of blue and green, or after thunder golden showers came falling like a rain of flowers. Frodo's poem. In the BBC radio, we hear Frodo's poem. There was no verse by Sam. In the extended film, we only get Sam's verse. Oh. You're like a Lord of the Rings historian, Andrew. But yes, we haven't quite, well, yeah, there's mention, maybe I did pass over that specific moment, but in this time that we're in Lothlorien, Gimli and Legolas tend to go out and explore a lot together. They build a friendship, which, for a reminder or to backtrack just a little bit, the elves and the dwarves were not on friendly terms at the beginning of this story, something that wasn't necessarily a direct connection to something either Legolas or Gimli had experienced in life, but passed down stories and passed down moments that of like where that relationship was with each other. And now we begin to see this relationship start to heal. I quite like this story, yes. Me too. Yes. There's just tons of... Okay. We're getting into now probably the most important part of the chapter. So... which I know is like funny because I've spoken so highly of the descriptions, and obviously we met the Lord and the Lady, and we get this beautiful hymn from Frodo. But the most important part of this chapter, it is the name of the chapter and all, is the Mirror of Galadriel. So one day, Sam, Frodo, we're walking along, we're having a good day, boom, there she is, the lady herself. She invites us to look at the Mirror of Galadriel. For it shows things that were, and things that are, and things that yet may be. But which it is that he sees, even the wisest cannot always tell. She invites us to take a look. Frodo doesn't answer yet. However, she invites Sam to take a look, and Sam says he will. Sorry, there's lots of noise. Okay. So Sam begins to look in. There's only stars as I thought, he said. Then he gave a low gasp, for the stars went out. As if a dark veil had been withdrawn, the mirror grew gray and then clear. There was sun shining, and the branches of trees were waving and tossing in the wind. But before Sam could make up his mind what it was that he saw, the light faded. And now he thought he saw Frodo with a pale face, lying fast asleep under a great dark cliff. Then he seemed to see himself going along a dim passage and climbing an endless winding stair. It came to him suddenly that he was looking urgently for something, but what it was he did not know. Like a dream, the vision shifted and went back, and he saw the trees again. But this time they were not so close, and he could see what was going on. They were not waving in the wind, they were falling crashing to the ground. There, that's Ted Sandyman, cutting down trees as he shouldn't. They didn't ought to be felled. It's that avenue beyond the mill that shades the road to Bywater. I wish I could get at Ted and I'd fell him. But now Sam noticed that the old mill had vanished, and a large red brick building was being put up where it had stood. Lots of folk were busily at work. There was a tall red chimney nearby. Black smoke seemed to cloud the surface of the mirror. There's some devilry at work in the Shire, he said. Elrond knew what he was about when he wanted to send Mr. Merry back. Then suddenly Sam gave a cry and sprang away. I can't stay here. I must go home. They've dug up Bagshot Row, and there's the poor old gaffer going down the hill with his bits of things on a barrow. I must go home. You cannot go home alone, said the lady. You did not wish to go home without your master before you looked in the mirror, and yet you knew that the evil things might well be happening in the Shire. Remember that the mirror shows many things, and not all have yet come to pass. Some never come to be, unless those that behold the visions turn aside from their path to prevent them. The mirror is dangerous as a guide of deeds. Sam sat on the ground and put his head in his hands. I wish I had never come here, and I don't want to see no more magic. No, I'll go home by the long road with Mr. Frodo or not at all. So Sam looks into it, and it's not good. It's, by any means, it's not good at all. In the book, Frodo and Sam go, yeah. In the film, it is only Frodo who sees visions of the Shire, part of Sam's yes, that's right, isn't it? Isn't it? We only get to see Frodo go. In Tolkien's original planning notes, Ted Sandyman wants to construct a red brick biscuit cookie factory. Well, that doesn't sound all bad. No mention of cookies in the final book. Oh, you always considered Sam's red brick building to be a commercial mill. Well, it's for Sam, like Sam losing the Shire. And I think there's something that should be so deeply noted here is that this would, to other people, this is like, okay, well, they're changing the way things evolve, things change, right? But we got such a beautiful description of the Shire and how Sam feels about the Shire and how important the Shire is and what the Shire is as like a character of sorts. So this vision that he sees of it like changing and turning into something that's not at all Hobbit-like, it is much more powerful because Tolkien took the time to set this all up. That's the problem with foresight. If you try to fix some future you saw, you might be the reason that future actually takes place. Yeah, and that's what the lady says. She's like, don't take this as the future with the path you're on now, because this could be the future if you don't go on the path. And that, you have to make that decision, right? So, anyhow, Frodo decides to take a look inside the mirror, into the Mirror of Galadriel. He climbed up on the pedestal and bent over the dark water. At once the mirror cleared, and he saw a twilight land. Mountains loomed dark in the distance against a pale sky. A long gray road wound back out of sight. Far away, a figure came slowly down the road, faint and small at first, but growing larger and clearer as it approached. Suddenly, Frodo realized that it reminded him of Gandalf. He almost called aloud the wizard's name, and then he saw that the figure was clothed not in gray, but in a white that shone faintly in the dusk, and in its hand there was a white staff. The head was so bowed that he could see no face, and presently the figure turned aside around the bend in the road and went out of the mirror's view. Doubt came into Frodo's mind. Was the vision of Gandalf on one of his many lonely journeys long ago, or was it Sauron? The vision now changed. Brief and small, but very vivid, he caught a glimpse of Bilbo walking restlessly about his room. The table was littered with disordered papers. Rain was beating on the window. Then there was a pause, and after it many swift scenes followed that Frodo in some way knew to be parts of a great history in which he had become involved. The mist cleared, and he saw a sight which he had never seen before, but knew at once. The sea. Darkness fell. The sea rose and raged in a great storm. Then he saw against the sun, sinking blood red into a rack of clouds, the black outline of a tall ship with torn sails riding up out of the west. Then a wide river flowing through a populous city. Then a white fortress with 7 towers. And then again a ship with black sails, but now it was morning again, and the water rippled with light, and a banner bearing the emblem of a white tree shone in the sun. A smoke as of fire and battle arose, and again the sun went down in a burning red that faded into a gray mist, and into the mist a small ship passed away, twinkling with lights. It vanished, and Frodo sighed and prepared to draw away. But suddenly the mirror went altogether dark as if the hole had opened in the world of sight, and Frodo looked into emptiness. In the black abyss there appeared a single eye that slowly grew until it filled nearly all of the mirror. So terrible was it that Frodo stood rooted, unable to cry out or to withdraw his gaze. The eye was rimmed with fire, but was itself glazed. yellow as a cat's, watchful and intent, and the black slit of its pupil opened on a pit, a window into nothing. Then the eye began to rove, searching this way and that, and Frodo knew with certainty and horror that among the many things that it sought, he himself was one. But he also knew that it could not see him. No, not yet, not unless he willed it. The ring that hung upon his chain about his neck grew heavy, heavier than a great stone, and his head was dragged downwards. The mirror seemed to be growing hot, and curls of steam were rising from the water. He was slipping forward. "Do not touch the water," said the Lady Galadriel softly. The vision faded, and Frodo found that he was looking at the cool stars twinkling in the silver basin. So Sam and Frodo had quite different visions, which is obviously, as we just discussed, very different from the movie, because right away in the movie we just see Frodo looking into the Mirror of Galadriel. We don't see Sam. And Frodo's is much more terrifying on a scale that affects many more people, I would say. So, but then the last little, well, there's two more important beats in this, and it's funny because it's like, this is the end of this chapter, but we find out that Lady Galadriel has one of the elven rings. She has Nenya, the ring of adamant. Oh, and this is where, so it's interesting because obviously she goes through her own little test here. She has to like go through this test to deny the, she has to go through this test to deny the ring because Frodo offers her the one ring. And Lady Galadriel has this other ring, and she says to him, "Do you not see now wherefore your coming is to us at a footstep of doom? For if you fail, then we are laid bare to the enemy. Yet if you succeed, then our power is diminished, and Lothlorien will fade. For the fate of Lothlorien you are not answerable, but only for the doing of your own task. Yet I could wish, were it of any avail, that the one ring had never been wrought, or had remained forever lost. You are wise and fearless and fair, Lady Galadriel," said Frodo. "I will give you the one ring if you ask for it. It is too great a matter for me." And, yeah, it's... So Frodo offers her the one ring, and she has this, it's kind of scary because it just feels so deeply evil. "Gently are you revenged for my testing of your heart at our first meeting. You begin to see with a keen eye. I do not deny that my heart has greatly desired to ask what you offer. For many long years I have pondered what I might do, should the great ring come into my hands. And behold, it was brought within my grasp. The evil that was devised long ago works on in many ways. Whether Sauron himself stands or falls, would not that have been a noble deed to set to the credit of his ring, if I had taken it by force or fear from my guest? And now at last it comes. You will give me the ring freely. In place of the Dark Lord, you will set up a queen. And I shall not be dark, but beautiful and terrible as the morning and the night, fair as the sea and the sun and the snow upon the mountain, dreadful as the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. All shall love me and despair." She lifted up her hand, and from the ring that she wore, there issued a great light that illuminated her alone and left all else dark. She stood before Frodo, seeming now tall beyond measurement, and beautiful beyond enduring, terrible and worshipful. Then she let her hand fall, and the light faded, and suddenly she laughed again, and lo, she was shrunken, a slender elf woman, clad in simple white, whose gentle voice was soft and sad. "I passed the test. I will diminish and go into the west and remain Galadriel." And then she's like, "Okay, now you guys have to leave." but she does remind Frodo not to wear the ring. And the chapter ends with Sam saying, "I really do wish you would take the ring. I think Frodo is right." She goes, "I would. That is how it would begin." Or Sam said, you'd put things to rights. You'd stop them digging up the gaffer and turning him adrift. You'd make some folks pay for their dirty work. She goes, "I would. That is how it would begin, but it would not stop without a lass." So she knows, similar to how Gandalf had spoken, like, I cannot have this ring. If I have this ring, it will eventually, whatever I do will eventually turn evil. So I can't take it. And that's where the chapter ends. Yes, that's true. Thank you for pointing that out. Frodo sees Nenya and Galadriel's finger, and Sam does not. Frodo is the only one who sees it. Galadriel left the Undying Land to rule herself and not be under the rule of others thousands of years ago. And there is this hobbit. All shall love me and despair. That was an episode cliffhanger in the BBC radio version. That's a good cliffhanger. Okay, now I know I'm going to read some of the comments in the community section regarding chapter 7 before we move forward. Okay, and Kelly, I see your comment too, and I will read that after the Fellowship gets their presents. So I'm going to read through this for just a second and rest my voice just a little. Yes, Wilde does also point out that Aragorn and Legolas can withstand her for long. When she does the test of the heart. Okay, this is very well put, because I feel like I spent a lot of time talking at the upfront of the chapter, and I don't feel like we rushed through the end, but Wilde has really descriptively put some information on the end in here. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. I am more interested in what happens after Frodo sees the eye. Galadriel describes her fight with Sauron to him, and he perceives her ring, Nenya, and at last we have found one of the three. We see how it is active and constantly at war with Sauron. Do we have any guesses at where the other two might be? Have we seen them at work and not noticed? Will we meet them in other distant lands? Will we never see them at all? Frodo himself asks why he does not know of them all. Galadriel answers that he has not tried, but she doubts that he is up to it. We also learn in this discussion just why it is that elves are sailing to the west. Either Sauron will prevail and the elves will be laid bare to him, or the power of the three will end and the elvish people will diminish. In either case, the elves lose. Actually, I'm so glad we're reading this part specifically of Wilde's description of chapter 7, because it is so important. Like, in my mind, I was kind of thinking like it's just Lothlorien, and it is, right? But the elves have been able to stay hidden for so long, and I had totally glossed over the fact that is because they have the power of the three rings. And I'm sure there's got to be one in Rivendell, I would imagine. I would think, but I actually don't know if we ever know the answer to that. But yeah, they're like, the elves are continuing to help, and by everything they do for the Fellowship in these chapters that we read is so important, because they're willing to help so deeply and be such an important part of this journey to their own demise. Like, they know that it comes at the cost of losing their safety, losing their homes, losing their power. But they also know that to keep the ring, if it can't stay hidden, then for any one person to keep the ring means evil. Even if that person starts with good intentions, those intentions will turn evil one way or another. And it's interesting that the ring already has tempted her, the One Ring. We do see a lot in the ending of this book. We see the power that the ring can have on people and how it can make even good people turn, and how that thought of power can impact others around us, even just by the thought of it, knowing where it is, which of course we'll get into in a little bit. Both the elves and dwarves are eventually doomed on Middle Earth. Other peoples too. Yeah. Well, yeah. I never would have read the books if his movies hadn't captivated them. Peter Jackson. You have to give Peter Jackson props. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I think, like, for me, walking into watching The Lord of the Rings, I've said this a few times, but like, I'm really glad, something about like having a reaction channel and like not having seen a lot of movies in my life is that I'm having this opportunity to sit down and so purposefully watch movies, whereas like the act of watching movies is oftentimes like just a moment to like zone out for me, which is the exact opposite of what I do when I record my reactions. So not only am I watching movies with like purpose and as much attention as possible, and I only do it, there are moments like you would think like, okay, yeah, you're just recording yourself watching a movie, easy peasy, but like to know that the reaction is going to be worth it, I have to be well rested. I have to be like caffeinated enough, but not too caffeinated. I can't be too tired. I can't have had a long day. Like there's so many things that go into like the sitting down to do it. And I'm so glad that I got to watch Lord of the Rings with so much attention and purpose and didn't waste it on a moment where I was like on my phone or like with a big group of friends and like not really fully paying attention, like having side conversations, because those movies are so good. So good. We do find out where the other two rings are. Okay, Kendra. Yeah, I can't remember. Do we find that out in the movies too? My brain does not hold on to a lot of information, so please do forgive me if you're like, how you've watched these movies, you don't remember? No, I don't. Out of sight, out of mind. It's why cabinets stay open. It's why makeup stays out. The movies aren't 100% true to the books, but pretty close, and what Jackson did was leagues better than anyone could expect. And I dread the idea of a Hollywood version of Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I will say it was so scary to watch those movies because I was like, what if I don't like them? What if there's this, like, if I was very prepared to watch those movies, and if like I didn't like them, I was not about to put that on the internet. I would have had to like change my name. Change my name. Speaking of changing your name and leaving everything behind, we have to leave Lorien. We have to leave. So we're going into chapter 8. This is a short chapter, but there are 4 main things I want to talk about in this chapter. Boromir slips up, Lembas bread, the gifts, and then the moment we leave, which I just think was so magical and beautiful. And you can tell how much love was put into that moment. So, we decide to leave. We know it's time to leave. It's time to go. And we get this little moment. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we're trying to decide what choice we're going to make. We have to make a choice of like which path to take on our journey to leaving. And we know that originally Aragorn was always supposed to go with Boromir, right? Because Boromir was going to Minas Tirith. Minas Tirith needed help, and Aragorn has this sword. So he was always supposed to break off at some point and go with Boromir. But now, without Gandalf, Aragorn's like, well, I don't really know what to do anymore because started this journey to do this, but now I feel this responsibility as this leader of the group. Hold on, I'm going to read that in just a second, Toodles. I've read it, but I want to discuss that because I understand that deeply. Okay, so Boromir is like, I'm going to Minas Tirith. That's always been my duty. That's always been my purpose. I have to go back to my people. Along the lines of this conversation, he says, at length he spoke again softly, as if he was debating with himself. If you wish only to destroy the ring, then there is little use in war and weapons, and the men of Minas Tirith cannot help. But if you wish to destroy the armed knight of the Lord, then it is folly to go without force into his domain, and folly to throw away. He paused suddenly, as if he had become aware that he was speaking his thoughts aloud. It would be folly to throw lives away. I mean, it's a choice between defending a strong place and walking openly into the arms of death. At least that is how I see it. Frodo caught something new and strange in Boromir's glance, and he looked hard at him. Plainly, Boromir's thoughts were different from his final words. It would be folly to throw away what? The Ring of Power? He had said something like this at the council, but then he had accepted the correction of Elrond. Frodo looked at Aragorn, but he seemed deep in his own thoughts and made no sign that he had heeded Boromir's words, and so their debate ended. Boromir's little slip up is so telling of where his head is at. It doesn't, okay, the rings don't come up explicitly at the end of the movie. I think if you look closely enough, you can see them wearing them. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, because there's a lot of detail put into the movies that there's a lot of details that are like right out said to you and told like you're walked through it, which I think is why those movies are as good as they are. For you can have read the books or you cannot have read the books, because they put in the details that are fan service and that like people who have read the books and deeply know the story and deeply know the lore will recognize and see and be like, oh, that's cool. They added that in. Or they changed that, but I understand that change, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they disagree with the change. But they also don't like, those movies are already quite long. Even the non-extended versions are quite long. So they had to make decisions, but they made decisions. I felt like it was a good journey. The third movie, I still say that was that extended version. The first two movies, I watched all three of the extended versions first. The first two movies, I've never, I think totally worth the extended version on the first watch through. The third one was maybe not, because that one's nearly 4 hours. Nearly 4 hours, or it is 4 hours. It's a long sit. Okay, I think that this is, Toodle says, I had a prejudice against Tolkien's books because my ex was such a pushy, obnoxious fanatic about trying to force me to read them. It lasted decades. There's something, entering into a fan base can be really difficult in a lot of ways because fan bases exist because people want the community. They want other people to have felt the same way that they felt. I feel this a lot when I do reactions, really beloved reactions, because maybe sometimes I have a different reaction than other people did. And then people will view you so harshly. They'll view your character harshly because you had a different opinion or different experience watching a movie, which I think is just a natural human occurrence because we know none of us have lived the same life. So no one's going to have the same exact reaction or experience with everything. So it makes it really scary to have an opinion sometimes because people can be so mean about you not having the same opinion. And people who are really deep fans of something, it does create a hurdle of entry because you're like, well, I'm not, the entry to having a conversation with it, you can't, you have to love it or leave it, those conversations a lot of times. So I understand that, and I'm sorry that you had that experience. I can relate to that, not with Lord of the Rings necessarily, but there's definitely been other things in life where I'm I don't know if I want to enter into this because this is really intense. for something I don't know anything about. Moving back into the book, though, we don't really need to get into the Limboss bread, but I just wanted to say we get the Limboss bread. I love how it's written in. It's just this like little light moment, and it's just so, it shows so much care that the elves gave to like not only housing us for what we find out to be about a month, but also just like I think the Limboss bread is a great example of the depth of lore that Tolkien writes into his books and then just like adds in. So they have this bread that will feed you and satisfy you for days, or at like, you know, for long stretches of time. And then it's just like, okay, yeah, here. It's just this like casual moment of giving a gift. But the gift is this really carefully crafted bread that will strengthen you on your journey. So that's why I wanted to talk about Limboss bread. But let's also talk about, oh, did I move the page? Oh, that was scary. Okay. Let's talk about the gifts that the Fellowship receive as they're about to leave. Good part is the third movie extended version is you get to see Saruman's staff. Wasn't in the theater version? Wow. Wow. Sam's actual gift seems useless at first. Sam's gift is definitely interesting. So everyone is given a cloak. Important to know that the cloaks, you will find them a great aid in keeping out of the sight of unfriendly eyes. Like to the eye, they don't really seem important, but the way that they're kind of written in, it's like, oh, then maybe they are. Maybe they are. Foreshadows the end of the books. Yeah. Sam's gift definitely does foreshadow the end of the books. Wow, that went. Sorry, I choked on air. So, where do we start getting the gifts? I wanted to say that was right there, but it's like, okay. It's more near the end. So before we get there, let's okay, yes. So they're taking us out. We decide, or we're met. Lady Galadriel comes and meets us on this beautiful ship. The company was arranged in this way. Aragorn, Frodo, and Sam were in one boat, Boromir, Merry, and Pippin in another, and in the third were Legolas and Gimli, who had now become fast friends. In this last boat, most of the goods and packs were stowed. The boats were moved and steered with short-handled paddles that had broad leaf-shaped blades. When all was ready, Aragorn led them on a trial up the Silver Lode. The current was swift, and they went forward slowly. Sam sat in the bows, clutching the sides and looking back wistfully to the shore. The sunlight glittering on the water dazzled his eyes. As they passed beyond the green field of the Tongue, the trees drew down to the river's brink. Here and there, golden leaves tossed and floated on the rippling stream. The air was very bright and still, and there was a silence, except for the high, distant song of larks. They turned a sharp bend in the river, and there, sailing proudly down the stream toward them, they saw a swan of great size. The water rippled on either side of the white breast beneath its curving neck. Its beak shone like burnished gold, and its eyes glinted like jet set in yellow stones. Its huge white wings were half lifted, and music came down the river as it drew nearer, and suddenly they perceived that it was a ship. Wrought and carved with elven skill in the likeness of a bird, 2 elves clad in white steered it with black paddles. In the midst of the vessel sat Celeborn, and behind him stood Galadriel. Tall and white, a circlet of golden flowers was in her hair, and in her hand she held a harp, and she sang. Sad and sweet was the sound of her voice in the clear, cool air. I sang of leaves of gold, and leaves of gold there grew. Of wind I sang, a wind there came, and in the branches blew. Beyond the sun, beyond the moon, the foam was on the sea, and by the strand of Ilmarinen there grew a golden tree. Beneath the stars of Ever Eve, and Eldamar it shone, and Eldamar beside the walls of elven Tirion. There long the golden leaves have grown upon the branching years. while here beyond the sundering seas now fall the elven tears. Lothlorien, the winter comes, the bare and leafless day. The leaves are falling in the stream, the river flows away. Lothlorien, too long I have dwelt upon this hither shore, and in a fading crown have twined the golden Eleanor. But if of ships I now should sing, what ship would come to me? What ship would bear me ever back across so wide a sea? So Galadriel and Celeborn come to give them a farewell, invite them to a parting feast. And this, after the feast, is where we get a gift. Each one of the fellowship is given a gift. Are these magical cloaks? Asked Pippin. I do not know what you mean by that, answered the leaders of the elves. Before them lay a long lawn of shining grass, studded with golden Eleanor that glinted at the sun. Having learned of the Eleanor flowers in the Lothlorien chapter, we now use the word again. Oh, yeah. Not all of us look at boats as wild horses. Yes, it is a reminder that hobbits are not big fans of water, not big fans of boats. And so the boat aspect is quite scary for the hobbits. We're saying Celeborn and Galadriel have gifts for all of us. So for Aragorn, he is given a sheath for his sword. It is overlaid with tracery of flowers and leaves, wrought of silver and gold, and on it were set its elven runes formed of many gems, the name Anduril, and the lineage of the sword. The blade that is drawn from this sheath shall not be stained or broken, even in defeat. But is there aught else that you desire of me at our parting? For darkness will flow between us, and it may be that we shall not meet again, unless it be far hence upon a road that has no returning. And Aragorn answered, Lady, you know all my desire, and long held in keeping the only treasure that I seek. Yet it is not yours to give me, even if you would. And only through darkness shall I come to it. Yet maybe this will lighten your heart, for it was left in my care to be given to you, should you pass through this land. Then she lifted from her lap a great stone of clear green, set in a silver brooch, that she was wrought in its likeness of an eagle with outspread wings. In this hour take the name that was foretold for you, Elisar, the elf stone of the house of Elendil. Then Aragorn took the stone and pinned the brooch upon his breast, and those who saw him wondered, for they had not marked before how tall and kingly he stood. And it seemed to them many years of toil had fallen from his shoulders, which I think is such a beautiful way of it, like saying like the stress left someone's body. So that's Aragorn's gift. He gets a sheath for his sword that makes that then if any blade that is drawn from the sheath shall not be stained or broken. And also a brooch. Arwen is Galadriel's grandmother. Yes. Yes, thank you for the reminder on the lineage. Yes, because then it says, for the gifts that you have given me, I thank you, he said, O Lady of Lorien, of whom were sprung Celebrian and Arwen Evanstar. What praise could I say more? To Boromir she gave a belt of gold. To Merry and Pippin she gave small silver belts. To Legolas she gave a bow, such as the Galadriel used, longer and stouter than the bows of Mirkwood and strung with a string of elf hair. With it went a quiver of arrows. And for Sam I have only a small gift, a little box of plain grey wood, unadorned save for a silver rune upon the lid. Here is set G for Galadriel, but also it may stand for garden in your tongue. In this box there is earth from my orchard. It will not keep you on your road, nor defend you against any peril, but if you keep it and see your home again at last, then perhaps it may reward you. Though you should find all barren and laid waste, there will be few gardens in Middle-earth that will bloom like your garden, if you sprinkle this earth there. Then you may remember Galadriel, and catch a glimpse far off of Lorien that you have seen only in our winter, for our spring and our summer are gone by, and they will never be seen on earth again, save in memory. A gift for a gardener, yes. So Sam loved that gift, or it says, Sam went red to the ears and muttered something inaudible. as he clutched the box and bowed as well as he could. This is an important part. And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves? None, lady. It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of Galadriel and to have heard her gentle words. Hear all ye elves. Let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ungracious, yet surely, Gimli, son of Gloin, you desire something that I could give. Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift. There is nothing, Lady Galadriel, nothing unless it is permitted to ask, nay, to name a single strand of your hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth, and the stars surpass the gems of mine. I did not ask for such a gift, but you command me to name my desire. Tell me, what would you do with such a gift? Treasure it, lady, in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if ever I return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in imperishable crystal, to be an heirloom of my house and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days. These two chapters, this time in Lothlorien, I think it's like 3 chapters in total that were there, are such an important historical moment for the dwarves and the elves and their relationship. So she gives him 3 golden hairs, and then she turns to Frodo. I come to you last, who are not last in my thoughts. For you I have prepared this. She held up a small crystal phial. It glittered as she moved it, and rays of white light sprang from her hand. In this phial is caught the light of Erendil's star, set amid the waters of my fountain. It will shine still brighter than when night is about you. May it be a light to you in dark places, when all other lights go out. Remember Galadriel and her mirror. And those are the gifts. And now it is time to read Kelly's comment. Okay. So, Kelly says, when Gimli makes a request very, very politely, many elves gasp for his impudence to ask for that. There is a story behind it. Of course, it's Tolkien. There is a story behind everything. So well said. Thousands of years ago in Valinor, before sun and moon first rose, Galadriel was asked by Feanor, probably the most important and impactful elf in all elvish history, for one hair. Because he deemed her hair to be so beautiful, he wanted to take one hair and put it into a crystal of light as wonderful casing to showcase the beauty of her hair. She said no to Feanor's request for one hair, and she gave Gimli 3. What Gimli did was actually a thing for chivalric knights in high medieval times. Knights carrying a lock or some fabric from the lady they love, too high above a lowly knight to have a chance to court her, but by carrying her lock, the knight basically swore to protect her and her honor against each and everybody, no matter against who and when. So basically, Gimli asked Galadriel if she allows him to be her knight, and she allowed it. That comes up later again, and while it sounds at first a bit funny, I guess Gimli is dead serious about it. And another of Tolkien's little hints, before they entered Lorien, Gimli warned the hobbits about a sorceress living in those woods, and everybody who sees her falls under her spell, and Gimli sure did. He really did, didn't he? He really, really did. All right, we're moving on to chapter 9, The Great River. And we're already at 1 hour and 17, so perhaps I have been reading a bit too much today. But we do have 4 chapters, so we're not at all in any sense going to rush. I just am going to be mindful of your time, as is respectful. He becomes her champion, to use an old term. Yeah. Okay, so the Great River. We start off, well, because the chapter 8 ends with this last paragraph. So the company went on their long way down the wide, hurrying waters, borne ever southwards. Bare woods stalked along either bank, and they could not see any glimpse of the lands behind. The breeze died away, and the river flowed without a sound. No voice of bird broke the silence. The sun grew misty as the day grew old, until it gleamed in a pale sky like a high white pearl. Then it faded into the west, and dusk came early. Followed by a gray and starless night. Far into the dark, quiet hours, they floated on, guiding their boats under the overhanging shadows of the western woods. Great trees passed by like ghosts, thrusting their twisted, thirsty roots through the mist down into the water. It was dreary and cold. Frodo sat and listened to the faint lap and gurgle of the river, fretting among the tree roots and driftwood near the shore, until his head nodded and he fell into an uneasy sleep. Am I using my maps? No. No, because it more than adding to my immersion of the story and like knowing where I am, it takes me out of it because I have to like search so hard for it. So I haven't been using my maps on my first read through. I imagine I know that the maps are beautiful and whatnot, but anytime I've wanted to go like figure out where I am in this moment, maybe when I get into the Two Towers, it'll feel a little bit better, but I haven't been using them yet because it takes me out of the immersion of like where I'm at in the story versus like enhancing it. Galadriel sings, but Frodo doesn't understand the words, but he remembers them. Yet as it is the way of elvish words, they remained graven in his memory. Yes, there was that the farewell. Okay. Which I would read, but again, we still have 2 more chapters and about 30 pages still to get through. So, the Great River, the beats that I have for this, tension starts to pick up pretty immensely. I spoke about this when we're in Lothlorien. It is kind of peaceful and nice, so to say, and like there's little moments where we're reminded that we need to get going and that our journey is perilous and our journey is important and going to be difficult. But well, Kelly, I've seen the movies, so I don't think for someone reading the books after seeing the movies, it's as like I think it will make sense, but like yeah. Because for me, for the way that I look at so when I'm reading, because I think it all depends on like how you read versus how you see. How I interpret a map, the maps are like wall to while some may look at the maps and be like, wow, this is really grand, this is such a big amount of land, you may be able to perceive those maps as like how much space they are. But to me, it makes it more two-dimensional. It makes it like, oh, okay, so that's not that long of a journey, or like that's fine. Like it's okay. Like, I think it depends. This is one of those things where like, we need to be, I'm not like harping on anyone, but like when you say things that are like, it's really important, it's important to you in life, that makes sense to you, that the map like enhances your experience of it. But for me, like when I look at this map, how it translates in my brain is like, okay. Versus like when I'm reading, I'm like, ooh, yeah, okay, wow, that journey's long. Like that took us 10 days. And then I go look at the map and I'm like, that took us 10 days. When I say that it ruins the immersion, like the maps make the story more two-dimensional to me versus enhancing it. So, just be mindful of kind of like forcing the maps onto people. Different people experience things in different ways. Just a little kind reminder. Again, not harping on anyone, just trying to explain how like my brain takes things in, because so that it can help like what is like a matter of like important for me to like see in the maps. While I think they're phenomenal, I think they're a greater resource for like maybe a second read versus a first, at least for Fellowship of the Ring. We're very far from the end of the book, but also I've seen the movies, so like there's just a different experience with the book because I've seen the movies, for sure. Okay, so the beats in the Great River, fear's picking back up. There's a log with eyes. It's Gollum, which we find out, and then we find out that like Aragorn knew that Gollum was following us. Legolas knew, I think, that Gollum was following us. we see this hunting eagle far away, this huge hunting eagle, which adds to tension building. And then we run in with the orcs. So we like get these like foreshadowing that like danger is imminent and danger is near. And then we have this run in with the orcs. Right when we're kind of like at this really perilous water moment that's really feisty, like we're coming into like, I can't remember what they called it, but the water is really rapid there and really unsafe. So we get through that, we get through the orcs, we get to safety, and we have to find a new path. Boromir and Aragorn are at odds on what the decision is going to be. We still don't necessarily need to, well, we have to make a choice there on like, if we go the way Boromir wants us to go, or if we go the way Aragorn wants us to go, and Aragorn's the leader, so we go the way Aragorn wants us to go after he finds it. We pass through the Pillar of the Kings, and then we have to make the final choice. Oh, everything okay, Andrew? I guess okay, we come to a point. But you no. Maybe. But yeah, I just want you guys to know that like I'm not like shady. I don't think the maps are dumb by any, like I hold a lot of value in the maps, but it creates more like I imagine that for a lot of people, seeing the maps creates like a more 3D version of the world, and for me it like makes it more 2D. It makes the world feel less real because it's a flat map. I don't know why. There was a scripted attack scene on the river in the film that they abandoned due to flooding in the region. Oh, well, you know what? Probably for the best. Love those movies, but did they need any extra? Literally, the earth said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Yeah, because I was thinking there is like a lot of difference in this, like, well, I guess that would be, yeah, we could start getting attacked by the orcs after Boromir and Frodo have their moment. So again, like I said, we have these moments of the fear building back up. We have this now knowledge that Gollum is around. And thank you for the heart me on TikTok. And we see that Gollum has like followed us to camp. We saw that. And then Sam is keeping watch one night. Frodo wakes up and checks in on Sam, or Sam wakes Frodo up and is like, okay, I've seen nothing. As they're sitting there, not going back to sleep yet, Gollum's hand like reaches up and into one of the boats, and then Aragorn wakes up and Aragorn's like, oh yeah, I knew. It's like, oh, so you know about our little footpad, do you? He padded after us all through Moria and right down to Nimrodel. Since we took to boats, he has been lying on a log and paddling with hands and feet. I've tried to catch him once or twice at night, but he is slyer than a fox and as slippery as a fish. Which is kind of like, they talk about him so kind of jokingly, but then a couple beats later, they're like, and I bet that the orcs know where we are because of Gollum. Yeah, we haven't gotten there yet, Andrew. I think that's in, oh no, that is in this chapter. Yeah. We haven't gotten there yet. So in this, so nothing really happens until the 7th day. So they move along swiftly. Tom Bombadil is still your favorite characters. I love Tom Bombadil still. Sorry, I just saw that. Yes. So they continue to move along swiftly. Time passes without an event until the 7th day. And on that day, hold on. What is... Oh, that's when they see the eagle. Later, as the sun was setting and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, he descried a dark spot against the fading light, a great bird high and far off, now wheeling, now flying on slowly southwards. "What is that, Legolas?" he asked, pointing to the northern sky. "Is it, as I think, an eagle?" "Yes," said Legolas, "it is an eagle, a hunting eagle. I wonder what that forebodes. It is far from the mountains." "We will not start until it is fully dark," said Aragorn. So this is when we decide to like start going by night. He had to rewrite The Hobbit so they would arrive at the Lonely Mountain at the right time. Is there... Sorry, I had something on my lip. Is there something in the key about the phases of the moon? Okay, so on the 8th night, okay, so on the 8th night, we start the journey. We're journeying by night, right? And Aragorn makes mention that we're going to only do one more journey by night because we're coming to reaches of the river that he doesn't know. So, unfortunately, we were much closer to the parts of the river that he didn't know than he thought because, well, this is when we're on our way and we start to hear, we see a few yards ahead, dark shapes loomed up in the stream and he heard the swirl of racing water. "I am out of my reckoning," he said to Frodo. "I did not know that we had come so far. Anduin flows faster than I thought. Sarn Gerber must be close at hand already." So we get into this sticky situation where we need to turn and get to a more calm part of water. Maybe he should have had a map. You know who could have used a map? Aragorn. Maybe it's because it's not on my phone, you know? You're using this stream to fall asleep. Okay, good night. Sweet dreams. A little story time for nighttime. I got you. So, okay, we're getting into the part where the orcs are here. "All together paddle," shouted Boromir, "paddle, or we shall be driven on the shoals." Even as he spoke, Frodo felt the keel beneath him grate upon stone. At the moment, there was a twang of bowstrings. Several arrows whistled over them, and some fell among them. One smote Frodo between the shoulders, and he lurched forward with a cry, letting go his paddle, but the arrow fell back, foiled by his hidden coat of mail. Thank God. Another passed through Aragorn's hood, and a third stood fast in the gunwale of the second boat, close by Merry's hand. Sam thought he could glimpse black figures running to and fro upon the long shingle banks that lay under the eastern shore. They seemed very near. "Yurch," cried Legolas, falling into his own tongue. "Orcs," cried Gimli. So the orcs start fighting us. We continue going downstream, and we get to safety-ish when we get to dry land, right? And then when we get our boats onto land, Legolas runs up to get a little more viewpoint, try to, he's got his bow, he's looking for orcs. As he's there, "Elbereth Githoniel," sighed Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape, like a cloud, and yet not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness in the south and sped toward the company, blotting out all light as it approached. Soon it appeared as a great winged creature, blacker than the pits in the night. Fierce voices rose up to greet it from across the water. Frodo felt a sudden chill running through him and clutching at his heart. There was a deadly cold, like the memory of an old wound in his shoulder. That's the wound coming back up to be like this moment of fear striking message is so well done. Legolas hits the thing with his arrow. We're back to quote unquote safety. It's quiet, and we make no fire. We get to we just get a moment of rest, right? Somewhere to stay for the night, a moment to rest, so we can move on in the morning. Sam sat tapping the hilt of his sword, as if he were counting on his fingers and looking up at the sky. "It's very strange," he murmured. "The moon's the same in the Shire and in the Wilderland, or it ought to be, but either it's out of its running, or I'm all wrong in my reckoning. You'll remember, Mr. Frodo, the moon was waning as we lay on the flet up in the tree a week from the full. I reckon, and we'd been a week on the way last night when up pops a new moon as thin as a nail paring, as if we had never stayed no time in the elvish country. Well, I can remember 3 nights there for certain, and I seem to remember several more, but I would take my oath it was never a whole month. Anyone would think that time did not count in there. Nay, Legolas stirred in his boat. Nay, time does not tarry ever, he said, but change and growth is not in all things and places alike. For the elves the world moves, and it moves both very swiftly and very slowly. Swift because they themselves change little, and all else fleets by. It is a grief to them. Slow because they need to count the running years, not for themselves. The passing seasons are but ripples ever repeated in the long-lost stream. Yet beneath the sun all things must wear to an end at last. But the wearing is slow in Lorien, said Frodo. The power of the lady is in it. Rich are the hours, though short they seem, in Caras Galadorn, where Galadriel wields the elven ring. That should not have been said outside Lorien, not even to me, said Aragorn. Speak no more of it, but so it is, Sam, in that land you lost your count. There time flowed swiftly by us. As for the elves, the old moon passed and new moon waxed and waned in the world outside while we tarried there. And yestereve a new moon came again. Winter is nearly gone. Time flows on to a spring of little hope. And there we have the moon phases. Yes, so that does give us like a nice passing of time. So well written, using the phasing of the moon as a way to count time, and also to weave that timing and the feeling of time passing differently in Lothlorien versus outside of it. So they go to sleep for the night, or rather I think they believe they take moments of watching, and the conversation does come up of like what choice we're going to make, and this is where Aragorn and Boromir have kind of like a little tiff, and I don't necessarily think the tiff is worth getting too far into, but what is worth getting into is the difference in how they see the choices. And Boromir was never really on this journey for anything other than like to bring help back to Minas Tirith. What we don't yet quite know, but we kind of feel is that Boromir has also an ulterior motive for being here. And once he found out, I don't even think he knew it, but once he found out the ring was with him, he's been like trying to figure out how to get the ring to Minas Tirith, it seems. Or even to get the ring for himself. So, but he also feels and needs to get back to his people because they need his help, that they also need more than just his help, right? So it's this really complicated, like it's so well written because not until we kind of hit this peak with Boromir in the next chapter do we really know like where his head is at. However, the tension is palpable and Aragorn is steadfast in his leadership and thinking of the bigger picture versus Boromir is thinking of like the picture that's more important to him, which he's not thinking, and selfishly, he's not thinking about the importance of getting the ring to where it needs to go. So they have to find this new way. They get to the rest is kind of like a lot of just kind of like getting to safety, right? They have to find this new path because they can't take the water they've been in, and they can't do this if there's different reasons why they can't go a couple different ways, right? And Legolas and Aragorn are like, we need to go find if this way I'm thinking of will happen. So they go off, they leave the group for like just not even as long as they thought. They come back and they're like, we found the way. They start going down a new water path. And we go through the Okay, the Pillars of the Kings. Now, this is where I think it's worth pausing to read for a second. It's way more complex in the books than the movie, understandably, but Boromir is so much better explained in the book. Yeah, I think Boromir is has much more depth to his character in the book than in the movie. I think his intentions, his person was flatter. I think Boromir was a flatter character in the movies than in the book. That's my personal opinion. Feel free to feel differently, or we can have a discussion about it too. So we go through the Pillar of Kings, and this is important because they're clearly giant pillars of literal kings. One hand is like put out saying like don't come in, and then the other hands of each king is holding a staff, right? Great power and majesty they still wore, the silent wardens of a long vanished kingdom. Awe and fear fell upon Frodo, and he cowered down, shutting his eyes and not daring to look up as the boat drew near. Even Boromir bowed his head as the boats whirled by, frail and fleeting as little leaves, under the enduring shadow of the sentinels of Númenor. So they passed into the dark chasms of the gates. Sheer rose the dreadful cliffs to unguessed heights on either side. Far off was the dim sky. The black waters roared and echoed, and a wind screamed over them. Frodo, crouching over his knees, heard Sam in front, muttering and groaning. What a place, what a horrible place. Just let me get out of this boat, and I'll never wet my toes in a puddle again, let alone a river. Fear not, said a strange voice behind him. Frodo turned and saw Strider, and yet not Strider, for the weather-worn ranger was no longer there. In the stern sat Aragorn, son of Arathorn, proud and erect, guiding the boat with skillful strokes. His hood was cast back, and his dark hair was blowing in the wind. A light was in his eyes, a king returning from exile to his own land. In the movie, the focus is on the two statues, in the book on Aragorn, yeah. We have a moment for the statues to shine, but then, yeah, they pull it back to show us Aragorn for sure. I look at Boromir as a weary warrior whose sole focus has been the protection of his people for so long that he can't see past that, even though he is an honorable man. Yeah. In the movie, I will say, did give him this like cast out son, and maybe I don't. Obviously, in the Two Towers, we'll probably get to know a little more about Boromir. Oh, wow, actually. I was about to say something that's in the movies that we haven't even... Yeah, we leave this book with Boromir still alive, huh? Okay. So... Where's my mind? Yeah, in the movie, we get this, like, introduction to Boromir. He is the son. He's, like, not the favorite son. He's kind of... His father sees him as kind of, like, this, like, weak something or other. Not like as good as his brother, and that weighs heavily on him as well. And I don't really think we get that part of that in this book, but we do get moments where like Boromir has like helped and has like carried one of the hobbits or stepped up in a moment of need, all mostly and usually because Aragorn tells him to. And I've been thinking a lot about Boromir today because we see him in his darkest moment, or maybe not darkest moment, but one of his lowest moments that we see him in this book in the next chapter. And okay. I think of the ring as some sort of like reminder of choice and reminder of like morality and doing what you need to do even when it's hard to like do the right thing versus doing the easy thing or like leaning into evil and like making like letting things pass because they're easy versus like doing the right thing, doing the good thing. So for me, that's what like the ring stands for. And so while I hold Boromir in this place of like, understanding that he fell to the power of the ring. It's also like he's not innocent by any means in my mind or my heart. He's a, well, because I wouldn't say he's a victim, right? He is an aware, well, I guess it depends on like what are you viewing the ring? Because to me, I'm not necessarily viewing the ring as like this like magical entity. I'm kind of like taking it as this like story of morality. And so it's like, okay, yeah, Boromir messed up. It's not anything I would be like, to death with you, Boromir, but it's also kind of like, okay, Boromir, fuck. Shit, dude. Can't believe you did that. Boromir was not the favorite son. I don't think that's right, Toodles. Faramir was the favorite son. Denethor saw Boromir as useless. I don't think, because, yeah, no, I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am on that front. Because that's why I don't think he would let Faramir go, because he, like, needed Faramir. The ring can only corrupt you if the ring has some leverage. Boromir is a good man, but just a man. Yeah, well, and that's like things in life. It's like, oh, well, how many times in life have we judged people for... Boromir was the favorite? Oh, that does not ring true in my memory. Oh, well. Memories don't... I did say earlier that my memory does not always serve me. Oh, well, then I've even been giving Boromir oh, I'm so sorry, buddy. You weren't even the favorite. You haven't even been giving him that grace. Well. My bad, guys. Well, yeah. I had remembered it incorrectly. Maybe because I didn't really like feel that. I mean, I felt sad at Boromir's death in the movies. But like I didn't feel that sad because he was painted pretty, like, they didn't do a lot to like add depth to his character in the movie. People were like, he's just a man, he just fell to the ring, it's the ring's fault. And it's like, okay, but I think that it's important that I've like lived my life as a woman, because there's so often in times it's like, but it's not his fault that, you know, that woman was hot. How is he gonna say no? How is he? It's like, all like, in the way that I see the ring being this like thing of morality is like, yeah, you can say that. We'll probably talk about it more when we get into, I'm sure we'll get into some of that stuff in Two Towers, but yeah, feel free. But yeah, I think that's kind of like, to say is like, it's important to know kind of that I don't necessarily see the ring as this like evil magical thing. I see it as this like evil magical thing that in the real world is like a story of morality. All that to say that like in my life, when I've heard like, well, it's not my fault, it's usually like a really dumb, like, it's not my fault because she was hot and like, what was I gonna do? Not have sex with her? Like, yeah, you had a girlfriend, you were not gonna have sex with her. Like, so to me, there's like this melding of like real life and like the story. So just important to know that like, I don't think Boromir is this like evil man, but I'm like, oh, what a dumb, pitiful excuse of like, it's not my fault. Cause like, oh, Denethor's wife, their mother died when giving birth to Faramir. Oh shit, yep, that'll bring a father to hate you sometimes, won't it? But that's what I'm saying, Toodles, is like, I don't see the ring as ultimate evil. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's important for you guys to realize that, like, while like, to some may see the ring as like ultimate evil, like I see the ring as like I see the ring being an example of like choices and morality and like standing by what you believe and like choosing like the right thing over the wrong thing. So it's just a matter of like perspective and how the story resonates to you, which does not make your experience wrong or my experience wrong, but it does make how I view the ring and the effects of people around the ring. That does change how I view those things. Because I'm not seeing it as this like magical evil thing. I'm connecting it to like the real world because that's how I want to experience the book. You know? So I'm not saying, I just want it to be like, that's what I'm saying, like that's why I don't see it as the ultimate evil. So I will sometimes have like maybe different opinions because of that. Boromir being a huge one. You have to be Sam for the ring, not to be evil. Yes, okay. Okay, so we end the fellowship, we end the Great River with this last paragraph. The 10th day of their journey was over. Wilderland was behind them. They could go no further without choice between the East Way and the West. The last stage of the quest was before them. The last stage of the quest, and you're like, okay, so the book's almost over, right? Now we have the breaking of the fellowship. Coming to the end, we'll spend maybe about 20 minutes going over this because we're hitting about where we usually end the mark on our lives, but this is obviously the last chapter of the book. So going over the top beats I wrote down, we have to make the choice. Frodo asks for another hour. Boromir comes to find Frodo. This leads to Frodo putting on the ring. He decides to go forward alone. Sam seeks Frodo out and they go together. Those are the huge beats. So let's get right into the biggest beat of all, is that it's the day of choice. When they had eaten, Aragorn called the company together. The day has come at last, he said, the day of choice which we have long delayed. What shall now become of our company that has traveled so far in fellowship? Shall we turn west with Boromir and go to the wars of Gondor, or turn east to the fear and shadow? Or shall we break our fellowship and go this way and that as each may choose? Whatever we do must be done soon. We cannot long halt here. The enemy is on the eastern shore, we know, but I fear that the orcs may already be on this side of the water. There was a long silence in which no one spoke or moved. Well, Frodo, said Aragorn at last, I fear that the burden is laid upon you. I could sit here for days, no rush, thank you. Yeah, I definitely don't want to rush it because this will live on, and I'll try to go back and do like chapters in the video for anyone that's watching at a later date so they can choose their own adventure. But I do also want to be mindful of everyone that joined live and not taking up the rest of your Monday nights. I fear that the burden is laid upon you. You are the bearer appointed by the council. Your own way you alone can choose. In this matter, I cannot advise you. I am not Gandalf. And though I have tried to bear his part, I do not know what design or hope he had for this hour, if indeed he had any. Most likely it seems that if he were here now, the choice would still wait on you. Such is your fate. Frodo did not answer at once. Then he spoke slowly. I know that haste is needed, yet I cannot choose. The burden is heavy. Give me an hour longer and I will speak. Let me be alone. At the start of the chapter, let us see what Sting may show. Instead, interesting that they're using Sting as remote sensing technology. Oh. Yeah. I'm trying to find that. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am. But a shadow and threat had been growing in my sleep. It would be well to draw your sword. Oh, yes, that's right. So that I did gloss over this, yes, because when we were resting, Aragorn came up to Frodo and was like, can you bring out Sting, which is the dagger of sorts that Frodo has that can sense orcs, and it glows. To his dismay, the edges gleam dimly in the night. Orcs, he said, not very near and yet too far, too near, it seems. That is important. Thank you for bringing that up. So They let Frodo have his moment. He goes away. Frodo finds somewhere to sit down and he thinks. And we see that he thinks about Bilbo, and he recalls everything that he could remember of Gandalf's words. Time went on and he was no nearer to a choice. Suddenly he awoke from his thoughts. A strange feeling came to him that something was behind him, that unfriendly eyes were upon him. He sprang up and turned, but all that he saw to his surprise was Boromir, and his face was smiling and kind. It's so, Frodo just has this deep sense of evil, you know, and evil danger near him. And that was, sorry, I got distracted in my head thinking about Boromir. But I think it was so unfriendly eyes were upon him. Book film difference. Frodo requests time to decide alone rather than just wandering off without telling them. Yes. Yep. Thank you for the book film differences. Those are nice to be reminded of and to like chat about. Because there's another one near the end too, when Sam makes a decision that I took note of. So Boromir comes up to him and he's like, where there are so many, all speech become a debate without end, but two together may perhaps find wisdom. You are kind, answered Frodo, but I do not think that any speech will help me, for I know what I should do, but I am afraid of doing it. Here's something I'll say about Boromir, okay, is I have forgiveness for Boromir, I have understanding of Boromir, but even in the book, Boromir was never not influenced or like side-eyeing, wanting the power of the ring, you know? Even like the moment we met Boromir in that first circle, that first council in Rivendell. So I just, you know, there's this moment of like, well, he wasn't ever really... I think a lot of times what really gets to me is like we blame Boromir's actions on the ring versus just being like Boromir didn't have as like deep of a I just think at the basis, like who said it, there was like he's at the end of the day he's just a man. Like the others had like something maybe deeper to them, and I just think it gets like a little muddied up in like the races of this story. Because it's like, yeah, you can just say like, oh, he was just a man. But it's just like, well, I don't know. He always had like a leg down. But is that fair to be like, to overextend forgiveness and understanding because we met him and he was already like, I like wanting the ring. Like, I just always think like he was always like gonna try to get the ring. I don't think it's like, the ring makes you more aware and also more paranoid. That's because we went over that a few chapters ago. I don't know, it's so complicated. I got flamed a little bit for my thoughts on Boromir, so I'm always like a little sensitive about it, but I stand by it. I think it's fair to like forgive him or understand him, but also he's not like, let's not put him on a pedestal is kind of what I'm saying. I don't know, maybe I'm just too jaded. Needs power to defend his people, and the ring whispers 20, I am power. Well, yeah. Okay, so I think I know already what counsel you would give, Boromir, said Frodo, and it would seem like wisdom, but for the warning of my heart. Warning against what? Against delay, against the way that seems easier, against refusal of the burden that is laid on me, against, well, if it must be said, against trust in the strength and truth of men. Yet that strength has long protected you far away in your little country, though you knew it not. I do not doubt the valor of your people. But the world is changing. The walls of Minas Tirith may be strong, but they are not strong enough. If they fail, what then? We shall fall in battle valiantly. Yet there is still hope that they will not fail. No hope while the ring lasts, said Frodo. Ah, the ring, said Boromir, his eyes lighting. The ring, is it not a strange fate that we should suffer so much fear and doubt for so small a thing? So small a thing, and I have seen it only for an instant in the house of Elrond. Could I not have a sight of it again? Frodo looked up. His heart went suddenly cold. He caught the strange gleam in Boromir's eyes, yet his face was still kind and friendly. It is best that it should lie hidden. As you wish, I care not. Yet may I not even speak of it, for you seem ever to think only of its power in the hands of the enemy, of its evil uses, not of its good. The world is changing, you say. Minas Tirith will fall if the ring lasts. But why? Certainly if the ring were with the enemy. But why if it were with us? And see, this is where I have a little bit of grace for Boromir, because he's so desperate to help his people and to save Minas Tirith and to make his dad proud. And for that, I have a lot of understanding and a lot of grace for him. Because I think it's in our most desperate moments that we do things that aren't always our proudest moments. And I can understand that. Were you not at the council, answered Frodo, because we cannot use it, and what is done when with it turns to evil. Boromir got up and walked about impatiently. So you go on, he cried. Gandalf, Elrond, all these folks have taught you to say so. For themselves they may be right. These elves and half-elves and wizards, they would come to grief perhaps, yet often I doubt if they are wise and not merely timid. But each of his own kind, true-hearted men, they will not be corrupted. We of Minas Tirith have been staunch through long years of trial. We do not desire the power of wizard lords, only strength to defend ourselves, strength in a just cause. And behold, in our need, chance brings to light the ring of power. It is a gift, I say, a gift to the foes of Mordor. It is mad not to use it, to use the power of the enemy against him. The fearless, the ruthless, these alone will achieve victory. What could not a warrior do in this hour, a great leader? What could not Aragorn do? Or if he refuses, why not Boromir? The ring would give me power of command. How it would drive the hosts of Mordor, and all men would flock to my banner. Boromir stood up and down, speaking ever more loudly. Almost he seemed to have forgotten Frodo, while his talk dwelt on walls and weapons and the musterings of men, and he drew plans for great alliances and glorious victories to be. And they tell us to throw it away, he cried. I do not say destroy it. That might be well, if reason could show any hope of doing so. It does not. The only plan that is proposed to us is that a halfling should walk blindly into Mordor and offer the enemy every chance of recapturing it for himself. Folly. Surely you see it, my friend, he said, turning now suddenly to Frodo again. You say that you are afraid. If it is so, the boldest should pardon you. But it is not really your good sense that revolts. No, I am afraid, said Frodo, simply afraid. But I am glad to have heard you speak so fully. My mind is clearer now. And it's interesting because we have seen Frodo offer up the ring twice, right? He's offered up the ring twice to people, Gandalf and Galadriel. But when he's given this opportunity to get rid of it with Boromir, he's like, no, my mind is incredibly clear. You're not getting this ring. Then you will come to Minas Tirith, cried Boromir. His eyes were shining and his face eager. You misunderstand me, said Frodo. But you will come, at least for a while. My city is not far now, and it is a little further from there to Mordor than from here. We have been long in the wilderness, and you need news of what the enemy is doing before you make a move. Come with me, Frodo. You need rest before your venture. If go, you must. He laid his hand on the hobbit's shoulder in friendly fashion, but Frodo felt the hand trembling with suppressed excitement. He stepped quickly away and eyed with alarm the tall man, nearly twice his height and many times his match in strength. Why are you so unfriendly? Said Boromir. I am a true man, neither thief nor tracker. I need your ring. That you know now, but I give you my word that I do not desire to keep it. Will you not at least let me make trial of my plan? Lend me the ring. No, cried Frodo, the council laid it upon me to bear it. It is by our own folly that the enemy will defeat us. How it angers me, fool, obstinate fool, running willfully to death and ruining our cause. If any mortals have claim to the ring, it is the men of Numenor and not halflings. It is not yours, save by unhappy chance. It might have been mine. It should be mine. Give it to me. Frodo did not answer, but moved away till the great flat stone stood between them. Come, come, my friend, said Boromir in a softer voice. Why not get rid of it? Why not be free of your doubt and fear? You can lay the blame on me if you will. You can say that I was too strong and took it by force, so I'm too strong for you, halfling. And suddenly he sprang over the stone and leaped at Frodo. His fair and pleasant face was hideously changed. A raging fire was in his eyes. Frodo dodged aside and again put the stone between them. There was only one thing he could do. Trembling, he pulled out the ring upon its chain and quickly slipped it on his finger. Miserable trickster, he shouted, let me get my hands on you. Now I see your mind. You will take the ring to Sauron and sell us all. You have only waited your chance to leave us in the lurch. Curse you and all halflings to death and darkness. Then catching his foot on a stone, he fell sprawling and lay upon his face. For a while he was as still as if his own curse had struck him down. And then suddenly he wept. He rose and passed his hand over his eyes, dashing away the tears. What have I said? What have I done? Come back. A madness took me, but it has passed. Come back. So he has remorse. And it's so, gosh, that's such a tense moment. I had to just read it all. And Frodo's already gone at this point. Frodo's run away. But Frodo leaves that ring on. And when he leaves that ring on for a hot minute. Everywhere he looked, he saw this. So when he's wearing the ring, okay, this is not that long. I can read this. At first he could see little. He seemed to be in a world of mists, and where there was only shadow, the ring was upon him. Then here and there the mist gave way, and he saw many visions, small and clear, as if they were under his eyes upon a table, and yet remote. There was no sound, only bright living images. The world seemed to have shrunk and fallen silent. He was sitting upon the seat of seeing on Amon Hen, the hill of the eye of the men of Numenor. Eastward he looked into the wide, uncharted lands, nameless plains and forests unexplored. Northward he looked, and the great rivers lay like a ribbon beneath him. I'm going to skip over a little bit of this. Okay, so he's looking over the lands, but everywhere he looked, he saw signs of war. The misty mountains were crawling like anthills. Orcs were issuing out of 1,000 holes. Under the boughs of Mirkwood, there was a deadly strife of elves and men and fell beasts. The land of the Bornings was aflame. A cloud was over Moria. Smoke rose on the borders of Lorien. And suddenly he felt the eye. There was an eye in the dark tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had been aware of his gaze. A fierce, eager will was there. It leaped toward him, almost like a finger. He felt it, searching for him. Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. Amon Law, it touched, it glanced upon Tolbrandir. He threw himself from the seat, crouching, covering his head with his gray hood. He heard himself crying out, never, never, or was it verily, I come to you? He could not tell. Then a flash from some other point of power, there came to his mind another thought, take it off, fool, take it off, take off the ring. The two powers strove in him. For a moment, perfectly balanced between their piercing points, he writhed, tormented. Suddenly he was aware of himself again. Frodo, neither the voice nor the eye, free to choose, and with one remaining instant in which to do so, he took the ring off his finger. Hi. Hello, TikTok. Welcome on in. So it is in this moment. This at least is plain. The evil of the ring is already at work, even in the company, and the ring must leave them before it does more harm. I will go alone. And you know what? That's a good reminder of like the evils of the ring are very widespread in Middle-earth in this moment. Like we see that spreading of evil throughout the land. So like another like point to Boromir, like it is like definitely a higher evil for sure. But it is what it is. I would imagine, yeah, so one of the voices is clearly Sauron. I would imagine the other one is Gandalf. Because Gandalf uses the word fool. Fool, take it off. Take off the ring. It sounded very Gandalf to me when I read it. I guess we'll find out. To later be revealed. So we do kind of like it goes a little back in time to setting up. They're sitting all at the fire, or they're sitting around having a conversation about what the choice is, about the choice that sits in front of Frodo. It does show how well, like, Merry, Pip, and Sam know Frodo, and that they're all like, we can't, like, here's what Frodo is probably thinking about. He's probably not battling with, like, what choice to make, but how to tell us that choice. How that choice affects us, and, like, he probably feels guilty that we all would go to Mordor with him. So, at one point we look over, we realize Boromir's not there, but Aragorn's like, don't worry about it. He's off to his home, as he always said, and no blame to him. So they're like, okay, well, he already knows what he's going to do. He knows what choice he's making, so we don't need to worry about where he is. He's probably just taking a walk. Boromir returns, and he's like, I fucked up. At that moment, Boromir appeared. Where have you been? Have you seen Frodo? Boromir hesitated for a second. Yes and no. Yes, I found him some way up the hill, and I spoke to him. I urged him to come to me in his Tirith and not go east. I grew angry, and he left me. He vanished. I've never seen such a thing happen before, though I have heard of it in tales. He must have put the ring on. I could not find him again. I thought he would return to you. Is that all you have to say? Said Aragorn, looking hard and not too kindly at Boromir. Yes, he answered. I will not say more. Yet. He put his head in his hands and sat as if he bowed with grief. So you can tell that, like, Boromir feels remorse, and he feels a lot of things for his last interaction with Frodo. The company goes off, splitting off to look at him. And this is where we have a difference in the movie to the book, I believe, is that Aragorn originally is like, okay, Sam, you're going to follow me. And this seems a little out of character to me, is that Aragorn's like, okay, we're going up to this thing. And then Aragorn just, like, walks so fast and leaves Sam behind. It kind of felt like there was like no one's just going to leave Sam alone, so I guess he's just got to go with Aragorn, but then Aragorn's just going to forget about him and not look back. Regardless, it gives Sam an opportunity to be like, okay. Sam goes, whoa, Sam Gamgee, he said aloud, your legs are too short, so use your head. Let me see now. Boromir isn't lying. That's not his way. But he hasn't told us everything. Something scared Mr. Frodo badly. He screwed himself up to the point. Sudden. He made up his mind at last to go. Where to? Off east. Not without Sam. Yes, without even his Sam. That's hard. Cruel hard. So Sam turns back around. He's going back to the boats. I love this imagery. He stood gazing for a moment, stock still, gaping. A boat was sliding down the bank all by itself. With a shout, Sam raced across the grass. So Sam's running to the boat. He tries to jump into the boat. He doesn't make it into the boat. He's drowning. Frodo has to help him up while still being invisible. And that's when they get to land. And Frodo goes, of all the confounded nuisances, you are the worst, Sam. Oh, Mr. Frodo, that's hard. That's hard trying to go without me and all. If I hadn't guessed right, where would you be now? Safely on my way? Safely? All alone and without me to help you? It would be the death of you to come with me, Sam. And I could not have borne that. Not as certain as being left behind. So Sam is steadfast that he's coming with. Frodo goes, but I must go at once. It's the only way. Of course it is, but not alone. I'm coming too, or neither of us isn't going. I'll knock holes in all the boats first. Frodo actually laughed. A sudden warmth and gladness touched his heart. Leave one, he said. We'll need it. But you can't come like this without your gear or food or anything. Sam turns back, gets his gear. So all my plan is spoiled. It is no good trying to escape you, but I'm glad, Sam. I cannot tell you how glad. Come along. It is plain that we were meant to go together. We will go, and may the others find a safe road. Strider will look after them. I don't suppose we shall see them again. Yet we may, Mr. Frodo, we may. So Frodo and Sam set off on the last stage of the quest together. Frodo paddled away from the shore and the river, bore them swiftly away, down the western arm, and past the frowning cliffs of Tol Brandir. The roar of the great falls drew nearer. Even with such help as Sam could give, it was hard work to pass across the current at the southward end of the island and drive the boat eastward towards the far shore. At length they came to land again upon the southern slopes of Amon Law. There they found a shelving shore, and they drew the boat out, high above the water, and hid it as well as they could behind the great boulder. Then, shouldering their burdens, they set off, seeking a path that would bring them over the gray hills of the Emin Muil and down into the Land of Shadow. And that is the finale of the Fellowship of the Rings. Of the Ring. Lord of the Rings, Book 1. Well, Books 1 and 2 are done. We freaking did it. Now on to the Two Towers, which will meet next week, next Monday, 5 p.m. And we're just going to do chapters 1 and 2 within book 3, within the Two Towers. So, same time, Monday night, but just 2 chapters instead of, we did 4 this week. We're doing the Departure of Boromir and the Riders of Rohan. Ooh, those are going to be good chapters. Those are going to be good. I'm looking for, well, it'll be, I think the Two Towers is going to come in like really quick, really hot, really heavy. So, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for the applause. Thank you for the comments and your time and sharing your love of these books with me and these conversations and discussing the storytelling. Feels good to have a fresh book in my hand. It does. Thank you so much, y'all. I will let you go for the evening. This is our longest one yet. Now the movies start to be more and more different. Ooh, okay. Perfect. So maybe we'll have to have more moments for differences between the movies and the books as we get into Two Towers. Okay. All right. I am going to end the streams and see you guys next week. Thank you for joining. I truly am so grateful for you all sharing your passion and your love of Lord of the Rings with me. Always a nice, relaxing way to spend a Monday eve. Me too. I agree. After all is said and done, I'm happy to have it on. I'm happy to continue having it on Mondays. Okay, that's it for me, y'all. I'm gonna go to the grocery store and get some work done tonight, and I'll see you next week for chapters 1